I spent most of my 20s learning how to live on scraps. Time scraps, money scraps, emotional scraps. While other people in my program had families who mailed them care packages or congratulated them on every milestone, my family didn't even know how many years my doctorate required. Every holiday, every phone call, the same question would slip out of someone's mouth like clockwork. Are you still in school? When will you be done? Still, that word did something to me. It made all my effort sound like stagnation instead of progress. But I swallowed it every time because somewhere inside me was a quiet, stubborn hope that when I finally reached the finish line, they would look at me differently. Maybe even be proud. Graduation was supposed to be that moment, the bridge that would connect them to me again. I imagined them sitting in the audience, listening as my name echoed through the auditorium. I imagined my mom crying, my dad clapping his heavy palms together, my sister pretending she wasn't emotional, and even my Uncle Rick cracking a rare smile. I wanted that image more than I'd ever admit out loud. So when the university finally announced the ceremony date, I decided to do something bold, something generous, something maybe a little foolish. I took every extra dollar I had saved from tutoring, research assistant hours, and weekend shifts at the hospital and booked the entire trip for them. Round-trip flights, a comfortable hotel near campus, and a reservation at a restaurant I'd been saving for just for this day. By the time I finished adding it all up, the total on my screen read in 14,000. It felt like my chest tightened. That number meant months of labor, careful budgeting, canceled outings, saying no to things I wanted. But I pushed, confirm purchase, anyway. Because family mattered, because showing them my world mattered, because graduation wasn't just a celebration, it was the end of a long, lonely road, and I didn't want to cross that finish line alone. The next few days were a flurry of planning, emails, confirmations, making sure everyone's passports were valid, forwarding itineraries. My mom responded with short messages, more emojis than words. My dad never replied, though my sister sent a quick, cool. Uncle Rick sent nothing. But then again, he never had much to say unless it was sarcasm. I told myself it was fine. They weren't sentimental people. They didn't express excitement the way other families did. What mattered was that they were coming. But as the days moved closer to the ceremony, I sensed something unsettling, an emptiness in the group chat, an odd lack of questions or packing updates. Growing up, I'd learned to read silence the way some people read weather patterns, and something about this silence felt like a storm creeping in. Still, I brushed it off. I didn't want to overthink. I wanted to believe I had done something right, something meaningful. 1 week before graduation, the sunset outside my window was soft and golden, the kind that made the whole sky look warm. I sat at my desk, arranging the guest passes for the ceremony, labeling them neatly with each family member's name. My chest felt full, finally full, with a kind of anticipation I hadn't felt in years. My phone buzzed on the desk. A simple message from my mom landed. My heart skipped. They left early. Maybe they wanted extra time to explore my city. Maybe, just maybe, they were excited after all. I smiled as I picked up the phone. Then I opened the photo attachment. I didn't recognize what I was seeing at first. The blinding white stone buildings, the impossibly blue ocean stretching behind them, the wide smiles on their faces. My eyes narrowed, and then, like a slow, heavy truth sinking into my stomach, I realized exactly where they were. Santorini, Greece. Not my city. Not anywhere near me. My entire body went cold. The air left my chest. And before I could even type a word, a second message appeared. This one from Uncle Rick. We needed a real vacation. You'll get over it. You're not even a real doctor anyway. That was the moment something inside me cracked. Not loudly, not dramatically, but with a quiet, devastating finality. Graduation morning arrived like a promise I wasn't sure I wanted anymore. My alarm went off at 6, but I had been awake for hours, staring at the ceiling in a numb haze. The messages from the night before kept replaying in my mind. My family smiling on a Greek island, my uncle's casual cruelty, the group chat's silence after I asked why. I had half hoped someone would call, would say it was a joke or a misunderstanding, but nothing came. Not a single apology, not even a flimsy excuse. I put on my cap and gown in silence. My reflection in the mirror didn't look like a person celebrating something monumental. I looked like someone who had finally understood their place in the lives of the people they loved. Still, I forced myself to leave my apartment and head to campus. If I was going to earn something today, it would be for me, not for anyone else. When I arrived, the campus was overflowing with energy. Families flocked together in clusters, straightening robes, adjusting caps, fixing tassels. Everywhere I looked, people were laughing, embracing, taking pictures against the banners and fountains. I watched a father lift his daughter's chin and kiss her forehead, a mother tying the ribbon on her son's hood, siblings arguing playfully about who took the best picture. It all felt like a world I had never belonged to. I took my place in line with the other doctoral graduates, trying not to stare at the rows of cheering families. A few of my classmates waved, their parents smiling warmly at me. One mother even asked, "Where's your family, dear?" I lied, saying they were running late. It felt easier than explaining that they were sipping cocktails on a sunny terrace thousands of miles away. When my name finally echoed across the auditorium, something inside me trembled. Not the joy I had always imagined, but something rawer, more fragile. The applause thundered, but none of it was for me personally. Still, I walked across that stage with steady steps and shook the dean's hand. He held my gaze a moment longer than expected and said warmly, "You've earned this." Those 3 words were the closest I had come to hearing pride in a long time. After the ceremony, the courtyard transformed into a maze of celebration. Graduates posed with their families beside balloons and bouquets. Loved ones pinned corsages on gowns, lifted kids onto their shoulders, shared champagne out of paper cups. I found an empty table near the edge of it all and sat alone, the untouched catered lunchbox sitting beside me. My phone lay silent on the table, its dark screen reflecting my face. For a moment, I wondered what would happen if I threw it into the nearest trash can. But there was a bitterness growing in my chest, slow, molten, impossible to contain. I lifted my degree from its folder. The embossed gold lettering caught the sunlight, shimmering like something sacred. Beside it, on crumpled paper, was the printed invoice for the 14 zalazin I had spent. I hesitated, my hand hovering above my phone, before taking 2 photos, one of the degree, one of the invoice, and dropping them into the family group chat. No explanation, just the truth. The reaction was immediate. "My mom, Alex, what is this supposed to mean?" My dad, "Let's not ruin your big day with drama." My sister, "You're seriously doing this now." Uncle Rick, "Stop pouting, you'll live." Then another message from him, "Grow up. It's not like being a doctor means anything in your field anyway." I stared at the chat as message after message came in. Deflections, guilt trips, little jabs disguised as concern. And then suddenly the group chat went silent. Not a single bubble appeared for a long minute. Then my phone started vibrating in my hand. My mom was calling, then calling again, then again. Her name filled the screen over and over, desperate and insistent. But I didn't answer. Not then. Not yet. I slipped the phone into my pocket, stood up from the empty table, and walked away from the noise, the laughter, the families. Because somewhere deep in my chest, something was changing, hardening, clarifying, preparing. The betrayal had broken something important. But what I was about to do next, they would never see coming. I walked across campus in a slow, wandering daze, letting the noise of the graduation crowd fade behind me. My phone buzzed every few seconds in my pocket, my mother's name lighting up the screen again and again. But I didn't look. I wasn't ready. I didn't trust myself to speak without either breaking down or exploding. I needed space and I needed silence. The campus felt strangely empty now that the ceremony was over. Confetti glimmered faintly on the pavement, drifting in the wind like fallen petals. A few stragglers were still taking photos under the oak trees, but most people had gone off to celebratory lunches or family gatherings. I passed by them quietly, unnoticed. It felt fitting. As I walked, my path took me past places that had shaped my entire life for the last several years. The old science building with the flickering hallway light, the bench outside the library where I had fallen asleep more times than I could count, usually with a half-eaten granola bar in my pocket, the courtyard where I once sat crying after receiving my 3rd consecutive research rejection. Every corner carried a memory, some painful, some triumphant, all of them mine, but none of them included my family. They had never come to see any of this, never attended a single presentation, visited the campus, or asked what I was working on. And now, when it finally mattered, when all my work had led to something real, they were on the other side of the world with drinks in hand, pretending my milestone didn't exist. I found myself in front of the fountain in the center of campus, a place I had walked by 1,000 times but never really stopped to appreciate. Water spilled down in soft cascades, catching the sunlight. The sound of it soothed something raw in me. I sat on the stone edge and finally pulled out my phone. 30 missed calls, 12 texts, mostly from my mother. My thumb hovered above the call log, but I didn't open it. Instead, I opened something else, the airline app I had used to book their tickets. The login screen felt like staring at a loaded decision. My mind replayed the messages from the night before, the picture from Greece, the caption, We needed a real vacation. I remembered the years spent juggling 3 jobs, the loans, the nights I went to bed hungry because tuition had drained everything. They hadn't cared then, and they certainly didn't care now. A strange calm settled over me. For the first time that day, I felt in control. I opened the bookings tab. All their reservations appeared in a tidy list: outbound flights already used, return flights scheduled for 4 days from now, hotel rooms booked for the same duration. All of them under my name, my credit card. The total I'd sacrificed stared back at me. My chest tightened, not from fear, not from guilt, but from clarity. One by one, I began clicking cancel reservation. The first hotel room refunded instantly. The second offered travel credit. I accepted. The return flights were trickier, but because of flexible booking options, I was able to reclaim a large portion. Not everything, but enough. Enough to make the gesture sting. Enough to reclaim what I could. My phone buzzed again. My mother, desperate: "Alex, please answer me, call me no." But I kept going. Cancel, refund, confirm, cancel, refund. With each click, the weight on my chest loosened. With each confirmation email, a boundary built itself brick by brick. When it was done, I sat back and stared at the now empty reservations list. A hollow, quiet satisfaction filled me. They had left me behind on one of the biggest days of my life. Now they would know what it felt like to be left stranded. Only after everything was finalized did I finally swipe to answer one of my mother's calls. Her voice burst through the speaker before I could say a word. Panicked, confused, shrill with frustration. "Alex! Something is wrong with the flights. They're canceled, and the hotel says we check out tomorrow." What happened? What did you do? Her desperation might once have hurt me, might once have made me pity her. But not today. Today her panic felt like justice. "I canceled them," I said quietly. The silence that followed was so complete I could hear the water from the fountain behind me. "You canceled them," she repeated. "Why would you do that?" "You know why," I replied. I could hear voices in the background. My father asking what I said, my uncle cursing, my sister demanding the phone. A storm of noise, all of them talking over each other. "Alex," my mother said again, voice trembling with outrage, "how are we supposed to get home?" "The same way you got to Greece," I said, "without me." And for the first time in my entire life, I didn't feel guilty for saying it. Something inside me had shifted deeply and irrevocably. I told her nothing more, and before anyone else could get on the line, I ended the call. Then I blocked her, my father, my sister, even my uncle, one by one with a steady hand. The world around me felt suddenly very still. The fountain whispered behind me. The sun warmed my shoulders. I had finally taken back the power I'd been giving away for years. They had gone to Greece instead of coming to my graduation. But I had finally gone somewhere too, somewhere they could no longer follow. In the days that followed, I felt a strange mixture of emptiness and freedom, like I had stepped out of a heavy coat I didn't realize I'd been wearing for years. The morning after graduation, I woke up expecting guilt to crash over me. That was the pattern of my whole life. They hurt me, and somehow I still felt bad. But instead of guilt, there was quiet. A clean, open quiet that felt almost tender. I made coffee in my tiny kitchen, the sunlight pooling across the counter, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't check my phone immediately. I didn't brace myself for their criticism or their dismissive comments. I didn't wait for an apology that would never come. I just breathed. It was astonishing how much space filled my chest when I wasn't carrying them in it. Later that week, the letters began. The first was an email from my father, short, stiff, and full of passive-aggressive undertones masquerading as concern. He wrote that the Greece trip had been a spontaneous family bonding experience, and that I shouldn't have taken it personally. He avoided mentioning the money entirely. Then came a string of guilty messages from my mother. Beautiful fragments of manipulation. "We didn't know it meant so much to you. We're family, we should support each other. You embarrassed us. Your uncle didn't mean what he said." She wrote as though she were the victim, as though my actions were unprovoked. My sister's message was short. "That was messed up, seriously. And Uncle Rick didn't bother with subtlety. You owe us for those canceled flights." They all wanted something: understanding, forgiveness, money. But not once did any of them say the one thing I had always wanted: "We're proud of you." I paused long before replying. I didn't want to act from anger. Money comes and goes, pride swells and fades, but boundaries, once drawn, have to be kept. I had spent years shrinking myself, excusing them, waiting for love in forms they didn't know how to give. Maybe they never would, so I didn't answer any of them. Instead, I poured my energy into building a life that felt like mine. My first day at my new job arrived. I hung my degree above my desk, the engraved lettering shining against the dark wood frame. The office smelled faintly of coffee and new carpet, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like every choice I had made had led me exactly where I needed to be. My coworkers congratulated me warmly, and when they asked about my graduation day, I smiled and simply said, "It was memorable." That was true, just not in the way anyone imagined. Weeks passed, then months. The silence from my family stretched out like a long road behind me. Sometimes I wondered what they were doing, whether they had learned anything from what happened. But those thoughts didn't hurt anymore. They felt like observing distant weather, clouds on a horizon that no longer had any control over me. Then one afternoon, I finally sat down with a stack of blank envelopes. I had waited until the hurt no longer felt sharp, until the anger no longer pulsed. I didn't want revenge fueled by pain. I wanted closure driven by clarity. I printed a photo of my framed degree, simple, elegant, hanging on the wall of a life I had built myself. Beneath it, I wrote only one sentence. Now I decide my worth. No explanations, no accusations, no apologies. I mailed one envelope to each of them. A week later, I received no replies, not an email, not a call. Maybe they didn't know what to say. Maybe they were angry. Maybe they were ashamed. It didn't matter anymore. What mattered was that, for the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting for their approval. They had gone to Greece instead of standing by me. But I had done something they didn't expect. I finally stood by myself.